Welcome back. Currently arriving at the Plymouth train station after a 30-minute walk in the wind and rain. It's stuff like that that you just don't want to do at all. But you're gonna look back on and smile because at some point, like when money becomes no object, you just end up booking private cars or Uber XLs everywhere, right? You lose the art of like walking in the cold rain. I don't know, I think about that in this season of life to like remind me to be grateful for the small stuff. But I'll get into some work on the train and check in with you guys in Oxford. Hopefully we get a little bit of sunshine. It's a beautiful city when the weather's beautiful. As is seemingly par for the journey, it seems that we have to jump trains because our train was canceled because we got stuck behind a freight train. So, updates to come. Train number 3. First train was blocked by other trains, so we had to get off onto another train. And then that train wasn't going to go all the way to our destination, so they made everybody get off and choose another one. So now I'm on that train, and I believe I'm 2 stops away from Oxford. Fingers crossed. Good morning, Oxford. Got in late last night. Couldn't be fucked to vlog, but I did take myself out for a post-dinner walk, and without the maps, I was able to re-navigate these streets back to the old alma mater, I suppose, Mansfield. And I was thinking there was this one sandwich shop that I went to every single day for lunch, and it was called like something extremely generic, the Alternative Tuck Shop. And much to my positive sight, I was pleasantly surprised to see that the store, at least the stand of the store, still exists. So today for lunch, I would be remiss if I didn't get myself a pressed sandwich for the good old days. I will take myself out for a mid-morning walk through the streets, and I'll be going there for lunch. But I had obviously the free day between Plymouth and London, or free 2 days, and I figured it'd be fun to stop back through Oxford and walk the streets I once did for the summer study abroad. And what's nice is, unlike that summer semester where there's no actual Oxford or Cambridge students milling around, there are indeed students here because it's the middle of spring semester. So it's cool to see it full of other students doing their thing. And while of course this does make me the obnoxious American, you can't help but romanticize walking around a place like this because it is obviously the fantastical background to movies and films like Harry Potter and otherwise. But on top of that, there is kind of an actual magical tendency when you walk through buildings that are, hundreds and hundreds, maybe even thousands of years old. I guess not thousands. Their actual rich history. It's amazing to be in the presence of places like this. Just kind of casually pop about, and I don't know, it's just incredible. I'm glad that I never applied to a place like this, even though a summer semester was amazing. I could not do a winter in the UK, especially after last week in Plymouth, and today is unbelievable weather, but this is only because I brought my brother, Mr. Sun, with me, and I'm sure tomorrow when I leave it won't be the same, but just an incredible little site. Definitely one of the coolest spots in Oxford is the covered market, as you can see here. Got all kinds of different shops and food and stuff. Obviously I'll be saving myself for the Alternative Tuck Shop sandwich as a loyal Mansfield College man. Key spot on the old walking tour, unguided walking tour, just milling about. There it is. Let's go. There you go, bro. Can I do one spicy chicken and this one, and then one brie and cranberry, please. Yep, perfect. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. That's all good, man. Appreciate you, bro. Thank you. No, I'm all good. Sandwiches acquired. We're gonna see here. Hang on, the lighting's probably not good. We're gonna walk down to Mansfield to eat these. Hopefully I don't get kicked out by the porter for being a non-student, but backpack should do me good as a bit of a disguise. I think the potential videographing of himself might be the dead giveaway, but we'll see if he's in a good mood. This building right here is actually the exact dorm that I stayed in. At the time, occupied only by the Georgia Tech faithful, but right now it's probably full of Mansfield Uni students. So kind of cool to be back exactly where I was. And here we are, dining hall over there. Here's the quad. And over here in the center, the strange, unexceptional upside down man statue. Gonna sit right here. I'll post up and get some grub going. As I sit here eating these sandwiches, I'm actually sitting in the exact same spot I would eat lunch like most days, these exact two orders. And it's nuts because it doesn't feel like it was that long ago, but it was literally close to 5 years now. And it's awesome to see that literally the same dudes are cranking the sandwiches out. I don't know why I had this expectation that maybe it would be gone or maybe they would be gone. You know, most people just stay in the same job for a long time, but because I feel like I've lived lifetimes since then, cool to see that those guys are still there and be legitimately in the same little area. And I don't know, just blessed to kind of make this trip back and then be also blessed with such amazing weather for the day. So gotta get in these sandwiches. I won't subject you to me chewing, but grateful to be back. The sandwiches were delicious as I remember them. I'm gonna see if I can snoop around here and maybe get back into some of the familiar spots. Right around this corner here, I took two history classes when I was here, which was really cool. I had some throwaway credit, and I'm glad that I chose history because it was just like really phenomenal. This is the exact classroom. Nice and empty in there. Yeah, I was able to take, European history in Europe. So like to be walking around Oxford and then your homework was like, read Engel or Marx. Just like a very like classical kind of education, which was like a cool experience. Because I don't think a lot of American students get that kind of experience. And then legitimately my room was like this one right up here in the corner. I don't think I'm gonna get a chance to poke in there. I imagine it's actually somebody's room right now, but regardless, cool to be back. Looks like they're getting ready, so I should pop out here. Don't want to make a scene, but it was cool to like wake up and get breakfast in there every morning. Feel like your own little Harry Potter dining hall. And I didn't really take any photos or videos back then, so had to punch in there and get that little snippet for myself and obviously whoever's watching this. But very, very cool full circle moment, because as I alluded to, like many lifetimes, I feel like I have been lived since this era for me. I look back on that 19-year-old version of myself as just like such a child, such a boy, so much he didn't know, so many things he hadn't experienced. But at the time I felt like a man and a fully actualized person. So it's cool to put yourself back in places that like former versions of you have walked and then come back with new lessons and new experiences. Not sure if any of this is particularly compelling, but felt experience is definitely very interesting doing something like that. POV, pondering philosophical ideas with the fellas. Walking a familiar route, this would have been the path that I would have walked to Monday nights at the Bridge, which is like a bar here, twisted off of fucking cheap plastic bottle vodka, which again, another one of those moments where this was the first summer when I was here that I actually ever drank alcohol. And then there was that little period of a couple of years in university. And then, as I've discussed this on the alcohol podcast, just interesting seasons of life, like how things evolve and develop, and then to be able to look on familiar locales with a new perspective, new eyes. But I still feel very much like that version of me was me, and this version of me is me. I don't know if I'm just losing my mind at this point or rambling, but interesting felt experience nonetheless. So, I'm now in London. Spent the rest of the day exploring, but it did kind of turn shitty weather, so I went back to the Airbnb to edit the podcast with Harry, which is out by the time you see this, but unfortunately it crashed after the full hour and 20-minute edit, so I'll have to re-edit it likely today. It's about midday here in London. I'm about to check into the Airbnb, probably do some exploring here if it doesn't turn to shit weather. Right now there's no rain, so fingers crossed that holds. As you saw earlier, I got a little chance. I was waiting for the Airbnb to open up to edit the podcast. Out for a post-dinner walk while it's still beautiful out. We got St. Paul's Cathedral there, for anyone who knows the central London architecture and whatnot. Got the hoodie on because it's brick. It's gotten a lot colder, 44 degrees-ish with wind. So the UK holds up to its claim to fame, although I've been blessed with some clear skies, so hopefully that continues. I haven't exactly said why I'm in London specifically, but tomorrow afternoon I will be having Milan on the podcast. He's the founder of Untethered Co. You probably recognize these Instagram reels.
Once you realize that most people are projecting their own fears and insecurities onto you, you can transcend your limiting beliefs. Most are programmed into scarcity and fear and continue the cycle by passing that on to their peers and loved ones. But to be an outlier, you have to consciously select what you allow into your inner reality. When you begin to filter rather than gather information, the game really starts. In an abundant world, knowing what to do is now about filtering. Audit your environment and your inputs. Stop and listen to the conversations you're having and what you're scrolling through. 99% don't, and they also don't recognize those inputs are planting seeds in their subconscious mind that will later manifest into their outer reality. You can only transcend this programming once you become aware of it. Understand that you are the product of not only your environment, but what you consume. You are an infinite stream and collection of experiences. How you decide to frame this, whether it's negative or positive, is up to you. Perspective is either your power or prison. This is an elite mindset shift that the upper echelon has been programmed and wired to make. If you want to learn how, comment mind and I'll send you a free guide.
Basically, I reached out to him a while back, and I basically was just saying I liked his content, and I really liked the style and aesthetic of his work. DM'd him to see if he wanted to hop on a call just to connect and, share like minds, what have you. And he was actually a really cool dude, so he was open to the fact that I was over here. I hit him back up a couple months later and I was like, hey, I'll be in London. You want to run a podcast, hit a training session. So that's what's in store for tomorrow. First time meeting him in person, so hopefully there's some good chemistry there. Seems like a pretty interesting dude. He's like my age, very successful entrepreneur. He has a restaurant. He has some success in e-commerce, but it'll be interesting to have a discussion about his journey, and then of course kind of the creative work he's getting into now. But heading down towards the river right now. Quite the scene out here. Been a while since we did an update, but I'm here with the boy, Milan. Little behind the scenes vlog here. But yeah, we've taken the train out of central London. We're out here in the boonies where he used to live, and then we'll be setting up somewhere in here for podcast shortly. So excited to get into it. Waiting for a little production assistance on the way, and yeah, we'll get in the combo soon. Grab something.
What was that?
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. You guys good?
Yeah.
I know very little about you, so we're just gonna have to explore this. I'll let you guys, because you're friends, like kind of interplay naturally.
Yeah.
But yeah. Here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Vitruvian Podcast, a podcast centered around self-mastery. I'm your host, Zach Shankin. Today, I'm joined by Milan and Ben, the creative business partners who work together in their artistic and entrepreneurial pursuits. Milan is the founder of Untethered Co., a brand focused on self-mastery and raising the collective consciousness. Milan and Ben have unique eyes for the aesthetic and the beautiful and are as much artists as they are entrepreneur. I'm excited for our conversation today. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. That was a beautiful intro.
Appreciate that, bro. Cooked it up a few minutes ago, so I'm happy it's good. I think it's a good place to honestly enter the conversation is with the secondary member here. It's first of all, I just want to say thank you for kind of making things happen here in your city. I was popping through London and gave you a shout. Obviously, we connected a while back, and I really had admiration for the aesthetic and the message of your work in combination, which I think is rare. And first of all, just making it happen, and then obviously you were like, yo, I want to give credit where credit is due. I have a friend who I work with a lot of creative stuff on, and that friend is here with us today. So open up the curtain a little bit to like how you guys started working together and like how you found yourselves both here on this podcast today.
Thank you, bro. I appreciate it. Like I said to you earlier when we were getting on the train here, I decline a lot of these. Not that I get a lot of requests yet, but I decline a lot of them. But I really, really like your brand aesthetic, Vitruvian Man, and I think from the few conversations we've had, we really align on quite a lot of places. I think it takes an aesthetic eye to understand another one, right? So, an introduction is, I thought it would make sense to bring Ben into the podcast because he works with me a lot on these creative projects, not exactly on Untethered, but on my YouTube stuff.
Sure.
Which is the same message from Untethered, but just expressed in a different way. Yes, so I brought him in because you guys align a lot with not only Vitruvian Man, but with the angle of self-mastery you're coming at with the whole creative athlete warrior type of vibe, which I tiptoe into, but I'm not fully in there. And I think Ben is more aligned with that. So I just think it would make a more interesting conversation. But I'll let Ben to himself out.
Yeah, if there's anything to add to that.
No, I think you covered it all, but yeah, thanks for having me, first off.
Of course.
And I think just to answer your first question of how we started working together as well, it was one of Milan's first few businesses that he was doing at the time, and we collaborated on like content with that. My background's kind of in creating adverts for businesses, so that's kind of how we started working together. And then over time we started doing more creative projects, working on his YouTube channel, and here we are today. So yeah, looking forward to the rest of the conversation. I'm intrigued again from what Milan's told me.
I showed him your brand as well.
Yeah,
obviously.
to delve a little deeper into what, the perspective that you're coming from.
For sure.
I think there's some similarities there.
The first time you called on Instagram, do you remember? I was actually at his place.
Oh, nice.
And I was showing him simultaneously. So, and that was like 8 months ago.
Yeah, it must have been. I don't actually remember. I'll have to pull up for my behind the scenes vlog a little bit of the intro conversation, that first message. I've talked before about how like many amazing doors are just behind like that first DM on Instagram. It's unfortunate they changed the way the algorithm works. Like or the app itself, you can no longer send unsolicited video. Yeah. That was like my hack for like podcast guests, because like I'm not afraid to get on camera. Eventually we're hopefully getting on camera. So I'll reach out to somebody and send a video like, hey, love your shit. And it just like immediately sets you apart from like the flood of DMs people get.
Loom link.
Yeah, I could send a full link.
I just done that. Yeah.
But then it's like, I mean, that's an excellent way to acquire clients as well. But all that aside, I think it'll be an interesting conversation. I think there is a ton of alignment, even like you said, just what we're hanging out talking about on the way in. Yeah. But I do kind of want to punch in on something you just said, like the distinction between your brand Untethered, which if you guys don't know, I'll have it linked in the description. Instagram is kind of the main platform of distribution for that. And it's kind of I don't want to paint with a broad brush, but like old money aesthetic kind of, and third party narrated, but obviously written by yourself. Yeah. how do you think about the separation between that brand and yourself? I've noticed recently you've put your name behind it, public facing now. So to open that up a little bit.
Yeah, when I first started, it was faceless, but that's because I wanted to validate the message and the vehicle. And once I saw it started getting traction and it aligned with where I wanted to go with my own personal brand, that's when I started kind of slowly integrating myself into it. I do want it to be a simultaneous thing, so like if you know me, then you know the brand, and vice versa. So slowly trying to work myself into the brand, but ultimately the message is the same between YouTube and the page. It's just the way it's captured and expressed is slightly different. But if you're paying attention to the actual message, then it's exactly the same. And it's interesting because when you put out content like that that's aesthetically pleasing, you can't really find out how many people are there for the aesthetics and how many are there for the message. But I guess you kind of can, because they go further down into your funnel. Join your newsletter, engagement goes up, yeah. So yeah, once I knew I had something, then I started kind of intertwining myself with it.
Was there any sort of, or has there been any sort of like difficulty, either the confidence to put your name behind it, or on the flip side, wanting to take total ownership and saying like, wow, this is really, really grown, like let me kind of almost commandeer and reframe this into my personal brand?
Yeah, I had this conversation with Ben actually just about going all in on content, right? And that was the name of my latest YouTube video, just going all in. And I realized that I can't just change the page into my personal page. I built something to stand on its own legs. So it's a kind of a fine line you have to walk, where you can't take full total ownership over it. Otherwise, you become too attached to the brand. This is just my business foundation that I've learned, right? It needs to be a vehicle that you're constantly feeding, and it can grow on its own and compound. But if you attach your name and self to it entirely, that makes it a bit harder to do.
Isn't that perspective framed a little bit with planning to exit?
Oh no. Yeah, actually, I guess so. But I don't plan to exit this.
Well, that's the thing, is I know at this stage you've kind of found your thing. You found your voice, which we'll get into, finding your voice as a creative. But all that to be said, like I know that perspective, I've even thought about it myself. You know, people are hammering it on the timeline, like, you need to be building something that you could step out of, blah, blah, blah. And I think that that's admirable. It's clearly a very lucrative thing to do. The caveat there is like, that's a finite game. And it's something that you've optimized for an outcome, which isn't good, bad, or the otherwise. It's just typically for financial gain. But then there's the second side, which is like, you're never not going to be Milan. You're going to continue to make.
I think it's a soft introduction into who I am as well, because if they really like that content, they want to know who's behind it, and they want to know, you know, what else has this guy got. And I think it's the same you're doing with Vitruvian, right? Because otherwise, I could just ask the question back to you. Right?
Well, it's very much the same, and I mean, I've had a lot of these mental shifts, and I'm still kind of searching for like the medium, I guess, creatively, like the video style, my aesthetic. That will evolve as I continue to iterate, as we were talking about. But I definitely know that the biggest gift I have to give the world is myself, as opposed to a brand. I think I can do both, but I'm putting all my chips in on me comparatively, and that also means my time and attention. So I'm putting my priority on my personal brand, and Vitruvian is something that was like born through me. Like I don't want to take ownership. Obviously the name I've co-opted from the famous Da Vinci sketch, but it has so much meaning that even at its impetus, like while I had like the brand that I was, I guess, arbitraging authority off of, right? Like I can use these timeless aesthetics, I can use the words of the greats, I can use the name from the sketch to create something that before Zach Schenken has authority in the marketplace, or people might want to listen, like, okay, at least it's visually interesting. But I've come more full circle where less of my attention is there, and I've created that as a container, as like an aesthetic container. It has an ethos for what I work people through, whether it's clients or my community. And then there's me, which is kind of the I don't know, evangelizer, or the prophet of the message, if that makes sense, not to be cultish.
No, I think it's just another vehicle to express you.
Right.
That's all it is. So yeah.
That's interesting. about finding your voice as a creative, and this could go to both of you guys. How has let's actually go into our conversation on the way here. We were talking about the gap, and I think a lot of not just creatives but people in life, if you are somebody who has been blessed, and I think it's a limited percentage of people, but like with taste, the ability to assess whether it's aesthetically or otherwise, like what is good and what is not, and you're destined to be somebody who is generative and making things. There's a period, and arguably I'm kind of still in the same place, at the beginning of the journey where you know what is good, you know what you want to be creating, but you can't necessarily execute on it. You recently wrote a post. Walk me back to a place, to the stage in your journey where you were there and how you found your way through that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm still there as well. Every time I see something new being made, I always tell these guys that, why are we not doing this, or why haven't I done this yet? Because it is annoying. Like when you have a good taste, you can spot it everywhere, but you just know that your skill is not there yet. But like I was telling you, the only way to close that gap between where you want to be and where you are now is constant execution and micro iterations along the way. But in terms of finding your creative voice as well, I think that's something that he has helped me with as well. So I don't know if you want to jump in there.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think it really comes down to not being afraid to be yourself, really digging deeper into who you are. As I've done content, I've just realized I was playing this kind of caricature almost, right? But to be unfiltered on camera is something that's really hard, right? Because often we're so afraid to show our vulnerabilities. So I think it really comes down to digging or going back into who you are originally, right? Looking at your story as a child, right? Why did you get into this? And I'm interested from my perspective, how did you start your story? Like, why Vitruvian? Why did you choose that?
Yeah, why was it that resonating?
Because I think that's ultimately what it comes down to.
I mean, yeah, I think you're hitting at like the core of the thread, and I mean, like it's music to the choir, I guess, for me. Like, it's the message that I harp on. Like, the biggest gift you could give the world, and I'll spoil I have 3 closer questions, which I guess I'll ask both of you. But one of them is, what do you think is your unique gift to give the world? I typically don't like to spoil it because it's a question nobody asks. So now you have some time to think about it. But I think the ultimate answer to that, if anyone really like boils it down, is you. You are the answer. You are the gift to give the world, because it's in your unique synthesis of like what you find visually appealing, what you found visually appealing or compelling as a child, the stories that resonated with you. Because like you and I could go see a list of 10 movies, right? And we each rank our lists. They'll likely be very different. We may have some in common. We may have like power rankings where it's like, all right, this one tends to be in the top 50, this one tends to be in the bottom. But like the one that like struck the chord of your heart, that like lights your heart on fire, completely different from mine, and that's okay. So yeah, for the Vitruvian, for me, like to wind the clock back, I've told the origin story before, but like, or my origin story getting into content, I guess, but like made my first entry into online money through like a course in Mastermind that was like how to build a business, as many people do. I had never made content before, I'd never made money online, all that. And so it legitimately it was on how to like build an online course, which is a bit of a backwards approach. I think you should always build the audience first and let them tell you what to build. But regardless, they were basically like, okay, so like what will you call it? Like, you were gonna build a course. I was really interested in self-mastery, as I kind of deem this podcast, but like just going through life, getting the most out of yourself. And that to me includes, as I've kind of described in the Vitruvian identities, warrior, philosopher, artist. So like the mental, the creative, spiritual, and the physical. And so I was like, I could do an online course about physical training, but I knew that wouldn't nourish all of myself. I went to study biomedical engineering. I absolutely know more about like training and nutrition than many guys that make plenty of money online doing it. But I also knew that that's a finite game for me. It wouldn't continue to interest me over a long time horizon. So I was like, okay, cool. I'll do a holistic self-mastery program, which, as I come to find out, is hard to market and sell, because you're kind of, the solution is
there's no result.
Total self-mastery, right? Like it solves all your problems in life if you go inward, but it's hard to convince people of
and
that.
It's never really solved. The problems
Right. I mean, there is the
I'm
false
always there,
binary, right? It's like it's a journey rather than
Exactly.
a destination. But what I'm trying to do is exactly what you said about creativity: is send people to themselves. And it's a difficulty in the online coaching space, especially because, unfortunately, great marketing is I have the solution, you have the problem. But the truth that I won't lie to people is that all the answers that you need are within you.
Yeah.
And that's the message I'm just trying to hammer home.
Nourish.
Right, and that's what I think a coach is. It's like you're just a catalyzing energy. We can do certain exercises, have a discourse, have a accountability, whatever the tools are to potentially like ignite that fire and like get that switch. And art does the same thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, they asked us what the name should be, and this is why I always say that like I feel like it came through me because I don't know where exactly it came through me, but I just like immediately I thought of the name Vitruvian. I was like, there's no way it's not taken.
When you say they, who are you referring
Like
to?
the people running the course in Mastermind.
Okay.
I don't know if you know Arlen Moore.
Twitter maybe.
Yeah, maybe. He's a big, started on YouTube, been in the content game for a long, long time. So it was him and another guy ran the course. But yeah, they were kind of like prompting us, like, what's the name? What is it going to be about? All these things. And so I was kind of at my drawing board and going back across the things that had inspired me. And Da Vinci was somebody who stood out. I was always like very fascinated by somebody who was great in every vertical. And I know we talked about this on the train. I had a difficult time like siloing myself at any stage in life, but like going to university, it was like, okay, you have to pick the thing you're going to be good at for the rest of your life. And I was as good at philosophy and writing and creative, like the humanities, as I was, but physics and calculus. We had to choose a side, and they send the smart kids to engineering school, so that's where I went. But I did feel like that period of my life I had to turn off a huge part of myself. So anyway, Da Vinci captured that magic where it was like he did it all. Like he was as good of an inventor as an anatomist, as a fine artist, as a sculptor, as a painter, and the list goes on. So he was somebody who I always admired. And then he obviously penned that famous sketch, which to me was kind of a encapsulation of holistic self-mastery, kind of the idyllic masculine body, but in it so much more. So anyway, the name wasn't taken, which was shocking to me, but I also, again, that's like the divine path, right? Like the door was open, so that's kind of where I started. And then it was at a time where a lot of these kind of pages that had a similar kind of aesthetic of the black and gray, grayscale, the statues and all that stuff, which also compelled me. I mean, it's like penned all over my arm permanently. And what's funny is like, this wasn't a branding decision, right? Like people can see it, and like I've heard that feedback. They're like, "Oh, your phone wallpaper. Oh, your tattoos." Like it's also on brand. I'm like, it's not on brand.
It's
I am
me.
the brand. It's me.
Yeah,
It's me.
Like I bled into it.
Exactly.
It's like
Yeah.
what Jay-Z said. Obviously, I don't really.
In light of recent events.
Yeah, but he said, "I'm not a businessman. I'm a businessman."
Yes.
Right? So like you're the business. But yeah, I think touching on Da Vinci, you resolved a lot of being only one thing, right? And being the famous quote he said that always resonates with me is that understand the
Science of
science
math.
of art,
Science of art.
yeah,
and the art of
art of science, and everything all connects. And ever since I've read that, I've understood every single thing is connected, right? And you don't have to be just one thing. So yeah, and to go back to the point of how to find your creative voice, very much what both of you just said. In Robert Greene's Mastery, he talks about finding your natural inclinations, and like you said, the things that you were naturally good at when you were a kid, or you lean towards, you were curious about, and then letting curiosity become the driver. You're just in the vehicle. I think that's so powerful, and it's the best way to find what it is you want to do.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's interesting and a struggle that I think everyone in our generation deals with, and it is even a problem with all of these like infinite online courses and new creators kind of popping up trying to teach, is that there's so much noise that it becomes really, really hard to hear that internal knowing and return to what is your inborn advantage, what is your nature, what are your inclinations. And so like that's all the work that I'm trying to do, both in like one-on-one coaching, the resources I put out, the message I'm trying to put out, is like send people back, and like not in just a think about it way, like what do you like the most, like what's your highest bliss, like that's helpful if they're really tapped into their feelings, but like tactically, what are exercises you can walk back through. So I put out a podcast recently called the Da Vinci Blueprint, which like has the best exercises I have at my availability right now that like I took from my program and coaching, I can just give to people. Because I get the question all the time, like, how do you listen to your intuition? How do you find your mission? How do you find your vision for life? And it's not out there. The answer is not out
It's
there.
never out there. Yeah.
It's always inside of you.
That's so funny that you said that. So my brand slogan, if you will, if you want to call it that, is helping you find your inner warrior. And that's because I've always grown up admiring people like Bruce Lee, right, Arnold, and other fighters. And so that's kind of why I went in that direction, because I was always interested in fitness, but then I also had a creative side. I was drawing, I was painting, creating videos. And so I had this dilemma of, okay, so I felt like I had two sides of me, like you said earlier, that really resonated with me. So I really struggled with trying to work out what my brand was. So how did you walk me through the process of like, how did you know, okay, this is me, right?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and I'm grateful for like the way my journey has gone, because it is very much the opposite direction that I think most people go, especially young men in like the age we're coming up in. Like, it's hammered down our throat, like, make 10K a month, like make as much money as possible, like buy the fat whip, whatever. And a lot of those people, it's like you race to the top of the money mountain and you find out it was like just a hill along the way, and like the mountain is you. Versus me, I spent all of my time and continue. Part of it is I just spend a lot of time in my head thinking, so I'm constantly self-auditing. And so I think like one of my advantages was earlier on, I was just a very self-aware person, so that when I arrived and I had done all these exercises, like literally on my own time, like Ikigai is one of them, super powerful. I was kind of like self-electing into all these like self-awareness exercises, trying to uncover like, why am I here? And you know, it's no divine premonition. Like I didn't have an angel and whisper in my ear, like, it's gonna be the truth, man. Like, you're gonna build this thing. But I do think that all of that stuff, and I talk about it in the blueprint, is it's priming your subconscious so that when the opportunity appears before you, you immediately just have this inner knowing, and you're like, that's the door I step through. So again, it was like, I could not tell you why that version of me bought into the course. Like I literally had to take a loan from my younger brother to pay for it. Which is like in and of itself crazy. I literally didn't even have the money. And then I just had this confidence that like, yeah, I can charge thousands of dollars for coaching online. And then every next step, like, what's the name? Okay, boom, it's this. And then from that, how do these identities appear? It just, again, it started pouring out. And as you guys have felt in creation, when you get in, like tapped into that, it's like a drug. Like it's yes, it's unbelievable. And then once I felt it, I was like, this is my mission, is like connecting as many human beings with themselves as possible so that they can feel it too.
And it's the line I always go back to from Creative Act, Rick Rubin, when coincidences appear more often than randomness allows. That's when you need to know, okay, something's going on here, I need to investigate further.
Yeah, we were talking about that on the train ride over. How much do you want your existence to just be riddled with, you know, oh, that's just a coincidence, I just happen to see all those numbers, or I just happen to keep hearing this word or this question, or every friend that I talk to keeps recommending the same book.
Yeah,
like,
that just happened to me. Same thing.
Yeah, like open that up. I know we talked about it a little bit, but
yeah. Well, it's just like walking that fine line between whether you think this is coincidence or sync.
That's brutal.
Do you think it is? I'm gonna pick that up.
What is that?
You're gonna have to isolate it. I think.
I mean, these are good. These won't pick them up.
Yeah.
But if you use isolation, it'll be fine, right?
Yeah, it'll be good.
What was it? Oh yeah. So.
That's so sad.
It's that guy who's playing Pac-Man on that.
Oh, okay.
Alright, just ignore it. But yeah.
That's funny.
So.
Coincidences and.
So it's walking that fine line of whether you think this is a coincidence or this was divinely planned and purposefully designed for you, alright? I still try and approach things with the rational mind. I don't lean too far into the woo stuff, I don't lean too far into the rational mind, but peering over the edge on both sides and coming to a conclusion, I always say that whenever you break down a coincidence, the chain of events that led to a coincidence you'll understand there's no such thing as coincidence. Every single thing that intricately happened for things to line up that way was by design. That's just what I choose to believe. It's like what you were saying on the train, right? The people that live that way or choose to live that way perceive life as better.
Little technical difficulties, but we're back.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly where we left off.
We're at coincidences.
Great poll. Yeah, exactly as I was saying, like, I definitely think we're about to wander in, and just brace yourself, audience. I think most of my fans, and probably yours as well, are open to the kind of more esoteric and spiritual happenings in our world. But even if you're not, even if you're somebody who lives very rational mind, very science-based, at a bare minimum, it makes your day-to-day better. It's like studied, as you said, like there's a study, optimist versus pessimist. Your life and felt experience is simply better by expecting it to be better and viewing things positively. Like, if you get in a car accident, okay, I wasn't meant to have that car any longer, like, something is gonna happen, maybe I'll get a better insurance claim and get to upgrade my car. Like, you just expect those like little things, and it is definitely irrational or delusional at times. Like, and I'm to the point in my life where it is 100, it's insane. Like, I only amongst the initiated, I'll say kind of some of the stuff, because someone will say like, yeah, okay, well, what if, you get in a car accident, what if somebody dies? I'm to the place in my personal, I guess, faith or belief in the world that it is all happening for a reason. It's way beyond my control, and I'm very limited in my window to be able to describe it. But like that Steve Jobs quote, like, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You just have to hope that you can connect them looking back. And I think that they always do. Like, we can always craft the narrative. I mean, the fact that we're sitting here, like, and if we could somehow transport back to younger versions of ourselves, impossible for that kid to predict this path. Not even close. Like, there was a time in my life, like, I have a full tattoo sleeve I got on my legs. Like, I was against tattoos for a period of time. I just wouldn't have known. But me now, I could like look back and see the point at which my mind changed, the point at which I found the aesthetic that I was interested in, the point at which I got my first tattoo, and the thing goes on. And that's a simple example, but I think even in the grander scheme, like, the people, and this is why I'm very bullish on, or I guess very anti the traditional path, like the 9 to 5, the safe route as it's purported, because I think that safety is as much an illusion as anything else. Like the promise that if you do X for Y amount of time, you'll get Z return. Like, that is at best a prayer. Because I've seen it even in my personal life, like, you can take that all the way to the end route, and you can still lose it all at the very, very end. Because like life doesn't give a fuck about your plans. Like, God's plan or the plan, whatever's going on, will be written, whether you're an active participant or you're kind of like a kicking, screaming child. Like, you're gonna get dragged along the line. So I think if you just look positively and assume that it's all gonna work out, it will.
Yeah, I think it's well beyond our understanding as well, and it's not our job to understand it.
Hard duality I'll put on you though, and I had a conversation at a cafe today with a friend about this. How do you balance the difference between true fatedness, like I have literally no control, it's all going to take care of itself, versus being an active creator of your reality and like making a plan and actually moving towards something?
A great question. I'll let you take it first.
I think what comes to mind is, for me actually, so I'm really interested in Nordic sagas, so a lot of the Viking, mythologies. And one thing that I talk to Milan about quite often is this idea of fate that they have. And in the sagas, fate is the name of the saliva that runs down Fenrir, who's basically this anthropomorphized wolf for the apocalypse, right? The end of times. And I think there's something so poetic about it, because they accept this inescapable, imminent doom that is forever approaching, but they still choose to face it head on. And there's just something beautiful about that. I think you find the meaning in the struggle regardless. So yeah, just something that I think about quite a lot. And I like their approach to that. That's something that resonates with me, because I just find in my everyday life, there's actually no point in looking at it from, or being a pessimist, right? Because how does that serve you? at the end of the day, right? Where does that get you?
Yeah,
It doesn't get me closer to the goal.
one thing I think about, like in this, theoretical argument with this rational person that I'm trying to convince to come more to my worldview is, would you prefer to be right, or would you prefer to use what is useful to you? Like, you may 100% be right. Like believing in some divine path, we may not be able to get to a place where we can have a study to verify it. The fact that, like, maybe there isn't a God, maybe there isn't whatever. I hate kind of even saying that out loud, but I like to entertain the thought idea. Maybe they're right, but would you prefer to live in that reality? Is it useful to you on the day to day? And I think it makes suffering a whole lot easier, if not inevitable.
It's even God as a concept. Let's just talk about God as a concept. Has saved millions of people, billions of people, if not. That's all some people have. It's just the faith. So you don't even have to prove it as a real thing or not. That has statistically saved billions of people, because that's all they have. So yeah, to answer your question on what was your question?
Well, riding the duality between
How much is in control?
like how much are you creating reality, and how much are you in control? How much do you make the plan day to day? How much is it like, I need to be active in this, versus the faith and the trust in the plan kind of unfolding for you?
Yeah, this is something I'm battled with all the time. But a good friend of mine once told me that even if a result is written for you, and let's just say everything is predetermined and destined, the work is written for you also. So that you can't escape it, you can't go around it. So everything that happens to you is unfolding that path and doing the work. I wrote today in the broadcast channel was about timing. People always talk about, it will happen in perfect timing, or they rely on timing rather than relying on themselves. And then the next thing you know, 10 years from now, they're in the same place and they're still waiting for timing. But they haven't been doing anything. They're just waiting for some magical event to happen. Yeah, but you're the one that has to actively move forward. Yeah, otherwise. So in that aspect, I think you are 100% in control of the actions you take. But it's like it's just a guiding force. Like, the more you do the work and the more you actualize your potential, the more the signs and synchronicities and doors open for you. That's what you can't take credit for.
I agree. Two things come to mind. One, I'll repeat what I said at the cafe to my friend earlier today. Is I think of it like, because I think you have to eventually get to the practical level. Like, okay, conceptually I agree. What does it mean? What do I do? And the way I like to think about it is be extremely in control in the micro. What are you doing today? And be completely unconcerned in the macro.
Yeah, I love that.
Like, stop thinking about a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, even a 2-year or 1-year plan. You just don't. None of us could say where we're going to be in January. We can guess.
Yeah.
That is the best we can say. We're like, I'll probably be with family, whatever, X, Y, and Z, in this city, in this. You have no idea. Like, you might get. We're all one DM away from our life completely changing, a new business opportunity. We're all one fatal accident away from being recollected in consciousness. So, like, yeah, I think that's one that's helped myself. It also eases anxiety as well, because you bring yourself back to that kind of eternal present moment.
Yeah.
And then as you were talking, one thing that immediately came to mind is the creation of Adam, that painting. Exactly, yeah. And I know that moment, super famous painting from Michelangelo, and I was just in Rome, so I was looking up at the Sistine Chapel, and in that moment, you'll see that God's hand is actively extended towards Adam, and Adam's hand is essentially kind of like loosely draped towards him. And I think that is kind of where the magic happens, like metaphorically, in that everything you want is right there for you to grab onto. Like that reality where you're financially abundant, you're being creative, you're working for yourself, you're traveling the world, you have the girl, you have the body, whatever your dreams are. It's all right there, but you have to do the work. And like a quote that somebody said is similar to the one you said, where it's like, believe as if, like, have faith as if your life depends on God, but act as if He's depending on you.
St. Augustine, I think I saw that as well.
Yeah, so powerful.
Yeah.
Because I often, even myself, I'll use it as cope or like a cop out
Yeah.
with like the faith-based stuff. You know, I know God's got me, but at the same time, He's holding me accountable.
Yeah, of
like
course.
He gave me all of these gifts and abilities. Why am I scrolling on
Yeah.
Instagram instead of creating content or writing
Yeah.
or moving my body or like literally doing anything generative? He gave me, you know, the words to say it, the voice to say it, the face that can go on camera, like all these other intangibles. I was born in America, not in poverty. Like the blessings are infinite, and I feel like that all of that in combination creates this like massive duty. And I kind of spit in the face of God in the times where I'm not being active
Yeah.
and just like deferring, saying like, oh, Jesus, take the wheel. Like no, He gave you hands to grip the wheel.
Yeah.
Like you are equally co-creating this reality.
Yeah, and again, it takes me back to another post that I wrote about doing your part, just doing your part, and then everything else falls into place, right? I think it was again in Robert Greene's Mastery where he said that stars always find their orbit and rivers always find the sea. No matter how much chaos there is going on, eventually in a long enough time scale, they always find their way. And all you can do is your part and zoom out from the chaos. So I think that's all you have to do, the work. And the example of that's why I wear the ring. Every time I look down on it, I think I need to be exerting more effort, you know, or effortless effort. But yeah.
How do you audit intentionally in the moment whether what you're doing now / today is in service of that greater mission?
Or does it serve future me, or is it instant gratification? That's all it is, really. As long as you're working for a future you know. And then I guess you can get caught in the trap of the goalposts always moving forward, and you're never gonna reach that thing. But ultimately, everything that you do, you can just boil it down to: is what I'm doing serving me now or me in the future? That's how I do. What about you?
No, I'd say the same thing, to be honest. I think it really comes down to knowing your why, right? Because you change over time, right? So you might be serving that current version of what you think your future you should be,
Right.
but then 2 years from now, I'm a completely different person. So, as you said, the goalpost moves, but I also change. So I think having like a North Star, like Milan talks about that in his work quite a lot, is really, I think, the foundation for me at least. For some people, a lot of people, it's religion, right? They use their faith and God as their direction, their compass, right? And I think really, if you don't have that answered, then you'll just be swayed by anything and everything, right? Because at any moment that can change. So I think, yeah, it essentially comes down to knowing what your bigger why is.
I agree, but I'll ask you to kind of expand on that a little bit, like, because I think that equally you could be self-deceiving yourself with the why in the moment, just like present, future, current vision of you, like it's all malleable, just like the why. So how do you know that?
That's a really good question. Yeah. I think the answer is you don't, but you figure it out as you go along. Nobody has, I mean, this it all comes back to your original question on faith, right? And uncertainty, right? You mentioned anxiety, and my mom says this quite a lot. Everything comes down to two things, faith and fear, right? You can't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So you lead by faith. You do the work, even if you think that the work is already written, you do that with faith. You don't know that, right? Because what's the alternative? It's fear. So you can even act on fear, or you can act on faith. And I think it just comes down to those two things at the end of the day. But yeah, to circle back to your question, I think you don't know. I think we take our best guess, right? Going back to the original question at the start, discovering who you are, because that's really what this is about. This game is a self-discovery journey. So of course that will change. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing. That I don't think it means that you're deceiving yourself. I think it means you're putting your best foot forward, and that's all you can hope for.
Yeah. So it's more of a intuitive in the moment.
Yeah,
Like
it's
this is
trust.
the best I can do right now.
Exactly. You have to trust yourself, right?
That's
Yeah.
not easy though. Like I
Of
think
course.
all three of us have curated to some degree a decent amount of self-trust, positive relationship with intuition, but at least I'll speak for myself, like that was not always the case.
Yeah.
How does somebody who's sitting there listening, like, walk themselves to a place where I do trust myself? Because maybe right now life is chaotic and it's like, well, I tried this, didn't work. I tried dating them, that was a mess.
Yeah.
Tried this job.
So yeah, that's a really good point, and what you said earlier just made me think about, you know, this idea of like being delusional, right? If all of the evidence is telling you otherwise, what do you do? Right? But you know, I feel like right now I'm serving a higher purpose, but nothing is happening. I've been trying it for years. That's how a lot of people probably think right now. You know, most of us aren't widely successful. Most people are struggling, but they're still trying to find their purpose. But the data, the feedback that they're getting from the world is saying, oh no, actually you're wrong. You shouldn't trust yourself. If you just look at it from a purely analytical view, right, a reductionist view, you'd say, okay, I've been doing this for a year, it's still not worked, I should stop. And that's what a rational person would do, right? Was it Einstein that said, doing the same thing over and over again is the definition of insanity, right? But how many stories do we know of people that have gone against that, kept going when all of the feedback told them not to, and then have found success? So that, of course, there is a level of delusion. And yeah, to circle back, not to digress too much on the trust, right? I think it just comes down to, for me at least, like this is where it's going to become subjective, and you mentioned it, is faith. I think one of the things that grounds me is that I do have faith. And for me, honestly, if I didn't have something to ground myself to lean on, I don't know what that would be, because I trust myself because of that, right? I have faith. I can't teach someone how to have faith. That's something you need to discover for yourself, right? And whether I use God and you use something else, hey, maybe that works for you. I don't think there's a right or wrong way, but this is what's working for me. So, yeah, I'm not sure if that answered the question, but yeah,
I mean, it's good to explore.
Yeah.
The way I would answer is I don't think you should trust yourself in the beginning, because you're most likely a programmed you're 99% programmed, and your thoughts are not even your own thoughts. You know, you spend most of your time in consumption prisons, you know, whether it's your TV, your social media, your feed, whatever you're feeding your mind. That's the thoughts that are being generated. So you can't trust yourself in the beginning. I definitely agree with that. I think it was the conversation I was having with Hamza yesterday. Right? It was,
Can I
why would
interject on that after?
yeah, of course. Why would you listen to yourself if you're a 15-year-old and you know all you do is
Watch
Degenerate.
porn, eat shit.
Degenerate
Why would
behavior.
you trust yourself? But I understand that inside, all the way inside, that's your true, authentic self. And that's what you need to connect with. But getting through those layers is going to be, that's what the whole self-mastery thing is, unwiring and then rewiring. So my answer to that would be to look for people who have done it, and go to people who have gone to where you want to go, and listen to them. He said yesterday that you should blindly follow people that have done better than you. I agree with him to an extent. I think you should still have a filtration system of thoughts, but for the most part, why would you not listen to him? If you're asking for YouTube advice, right? That's the example he said that he put a comment out saying giving YouTube advice, and someone in the comments said, no, I don't agree, I don't think you should. But that person had 200 subscribers,
Right.
but he's got 2.5 million.
Yeah.
You know, he didn't reply, because why would you not listen to someone that has done what you want to do, right? And obviously it's not just in that, it's in everything.
It's good that you highlighted the filter though, because the danger is in like essentially false prophets, like people who have kind of backwards walked themselves into a state. Like a perfect example is not every great athlete. In fact, most of them make shit coaches.
Yeah.
It's a different skill set altogether to be able to like bring someone to a place, or even retroactively systematize your success. You know, like Hamza, for example, and this isn't to speak for or against, but he found success as a YouTuber. Does that mean he is great at making other people successful on YouTube? It's hard to say. Like, would he be able to redo it for himself? For sure. He knows how he got there. but I think there's a bunch of different paths to the mountain. So it's good that you have a filter, even if you are following a teacher, a guru, a mentor. Always be assessing, does this feel right for myself, and how can I apply this for me? Like there does need to be
I
critical
do think
thinking.
you should be yourself and don't lose your identity, because that's the issue that has come up with a lot with like Tate. There's mini Tates everywhere.
Yeah.
No one's like themselves anymore, right? So I do think you should have a filter, but again, it's like, how good is the quality of your filter if
Right.
you haven't done any work on yourself? You don't know how to even categorize thoughts.
Yeah, I had a friend, I went on his podcast, he's a fitness trainer, and he was asking me about intuition, and in that context, it was like intuitive eating. You know, I'm at a place right now, like I eat intuitively. I've gone an incredible full circle, whatever, like from tracking to eating disorder, all of it. And the example I gave him is that you have to earn your way to intuition. Like the intuition of a drug addict is to continue taking the drug,
Exactly.
right? That's what their higher self is telling them.
Yeah.
So the truth is, you have to. It's like I describe intuition as like a relationship outside of yourself a little bit, and it's as if you give me a piece of advice on, say, Instagram. I try it, it works. Okay, I listened, I got positive feedback. That relationship is strengthened. And then I ask you another question. Oh, that worked. Like, what else? Boom. We go back and forth. If it continues to trend upward, I'm building a relationship where eventually I can have complete blind faith, and I know that Milan is going to take me to Instagram heaven or whatever. And I think in the same way, our own intuition, that inner knowing. If you get this intuitive feeling, like, you know what, something about this job opportunity just feels wrong. Like, I just can't take that one. And you trust that feeling, you can't explain it to anyone, there's no X's and O's, but then you find out down the line that company's fraudulent.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting. My intuition was right. Now we're starting to build a relationship. So I think it's a back and forth, and you start in the small things, you start in the very, very little things, and you work your way towards it. And I think in the self-mastery realm, like if you're somebody who's like truly at baseline, where like you're just starting to kind of wake up to knowing you have potential, but you're pretty lost right now, you're in a consumption prison, you're maybe not in great shape. I think that the physical vehicle, which we probably agree with, it has to be the base of the pyramid. Like of the three identities, you must command your body first.
Yeah.
And arguably it's like the end point of spiritualism, but I think it's definitely the starting point.
Yeah.
Like you have to make sure that your physical vehicle is allowing you to even think and see clearly.
Yeah.
That your sleep right, food, all that stuff. It seems very baseline, like and very obvious, but a huge percentage of the population are truly like suffering.
Yeah.
And so all this stuff we're talking about, like thinking creatively, like no wonder you have no idea what your life direction is when you're like literally struggling with brain fog and fatigue at 2 p.m. every single day.
That's what I'm saying. I think you need data points. Like you said, earning your intuition is a really good point. So the more you find out that your intuition was right, the more you can start to trust it. But in the beginning, there's so much noise. 99% of your mind is noise. So yeah, you can test on a micro scale and then find those data points and then slowly start to trust your intuition. Yeah.
You talk about in your content a lot filtering, and I think it's really, really important. How can someone develop an effective filter that serves them in a world that is so noisy as it is now?
Yeah, I always say, if you're going to read a book on a certain topic, this is what Naval says, just read the same great books 10 times over rather than 50 on the same topic. Yeah, because let's say the topic is self-mastery, right? Of course, every author has their own opinion and perspective and different lens that they see the world through. But the message slowly changes throughout the books. And then what you read in the first book and the 50th book could be completely different. Self-mastery maybe is the wrong term, maybe it's too broad, maybe it's in a very specific area. But, so yeah, that's one thing I would do, is read the same great books over and over again to really understand the message. And then two, I would select reliable resources that I find trustworthy, and I would listen to them rather than, again, 50 gurus on the same topic. I think it's just about narrowing in, but still having an open perspective and being able to hear others out. But ultimately, you've selected the people that you're going to listen to, the things that you're going to hear, But it is, again, it's a fine line. You can't close yourself off to everything else as well.
Have you ever experienced imposter syndrome being now somebody who's teaching truth, like broad truth, but knowing that you're now adding to that cacophony of like millions of people also saying the same messages throughout history?
100%. But that's, I always say, there's no such thing as a new idea. It's just reframed in a new web of experiences, a new web of layers. That's all it is. So I'm not claiming that I was the first one to ever say this idea, but maybe the way my unique combination of experiences, the way I've had my life and the way I can say it would resonate with you more. But I'm not claiming to be the source. I think that's important. So, like you said, it's not coming from you, it's coming through you. So that's the way I try and frame it. Otherwise you can get into a sticky area if you claim that you're the source.
I agree. I just know that I've felt, and this is like maybe like a little bit more high level. I've gotten in this place where I'm like, you know, could I create a work better than, I don't know, like Nietzsche or Jung or whatever? Like these people that like truly created kind of these prolific works and potentially generated new ideas. Am I just adding to the noise, or am I permeating signal? Because I do feel like I'm telling stuff that is helpful, and then I get comments, DMs. I work with one-on-one clients, and that is continually affirming me. So I know it's helping people. So I'm empowered now in my path. But have you ever thought about like, I'm telling people to filter out the best, you know, listen to 5 books, and then here I am recreating the wheel in a bit of a sense?
Yeah, it's a paradox, I think. Let me think about it.
To be honest, I think.
Okay, I'll take it back.
Yeah.
Should we say the question one more time so I can think about it again?
Yeah. Do you struggle with, or have you struggled with, as someone who is now trying to share these messages and spread truth, but knowing that it's coming through you, it's like somewhat reiterating these kind of maybe more transcendent truths that were in the Bible or the Bhagavad Gita or whatever, knowing that you're just essentially another messenger, has that ever created kind of doubt or like what kind of like why am I going down this road?
Yeah, I got you now. No, because I don't think I'm adding to the noise. I think that all I'm doing is just sharing my one-of-one perspective. I don't think anyone has the same perspective, even if it's just a fraction of a degree different. I think, and also it's hard for you to understand how someone else is going to perceive it. What you perceive as signal, I might perceive as noise. So I can't categorize it for someone else, I can just put it out there. So I try and detach from it as well. Everything I just put out, just forget about it afterwards.
I think that's very helpful.
And also, sorry to cut you off, I'm just writing to myself. That's the way I frame it. Every single thing that I put out, every video, every tweet, every post, is just to myself.
Current?
Yeah.
Your current self?
Oh, to my current self. Reminders to myself.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it's not like writing to like a younger version of you?
There are times I'm writing to a younger version of myself, but mainly it's for myself now to look back on.
I think if I can interject, I think you really kind of answered it sort of in the question. I mean, you were saying this yesterday, I think it was you anyway. There's always new 16-year-olds. So there's always a new young person for the synchronicity happens again. No, but there's always a new person to get the message to, right? So why shouldn't, let's take Hamza, you using him as an example earlier, right? Why shouldn't he keep making videos from his unique perspective, right? That then grabs the attention of someone who's living in an age where this medium is the new format to discover the ideas.
Right.
So it's not necessarily about coming up with new ideas, it's that how do you reshape them? Because there's always going to be people that need to hear the message. And I think that's what the important thing is.
Yeah, I think that's so huge, and I love that we're in a time where we can like kind of literally get the direct feedback, whether it's a comment or like a private community, because I continually like, I read the great works of whatever it is and I'm like, fuck, like am I ever going to be able to create something like that? Like what am I doing when somebody can go and read Socrates. Like genuinely, I'm like sitting there like I can't hold the candle. But like you said, it's like you speak from your perspective and also know that there is always an archetype. Like a younger version of me needed the YouTubers that I watched. I needed those guys.
Yeah.
Like that one video, X, Y, and Z when that I was in the YouTube rabbit hole that like woke up this little part of me that like now is permanently seared in my psychology, needed to happen. And like by creating every new data point, every new podcast, every new YouTube video, it's like planting all these seeds all over the world, like, and just never coming back. Like there might be a tree, that seed might die, but you just like, you keep planting on good faith that like enough of them will. And I love that I get the chance to like hear from the seeds, like the people that are like messaging you.
Yeah.
So powerful.
I think it's even
No.
Us comparing ourselves to people like Nietzsche or Socrates, or you know, that's an impossible thing to live up to. But you gotta remember that who were their like YouTubers? who were they looking to? And then if you go, I think it's infinite regress, right? So it goes all the way back to what the source, and that's what we're trying to pull from now, with the addition of all of these perspectives. So it's kind of like we could form a even better message now if we wanted to.
Yeah. I mean, we stand on the shoulders of giants, whatever that. I think it was Newton, Isaac Newton, which is crazy. That came from him as well.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I think, but that's one, I guess, with your work specifically, because I do notice, like, there's a through line of like platitudinal wisdom. How much do you balance paying homage versus speaking from your own voice?
Yeah. So it's weird you said that, because I was thinking about how I formulate my work, and a lot of it is. It will sound weird to some people, but it's divine transmission. I think when you're really tapped in and you're in flow state, ideas just come to you, right? Like Rick Rubin says, ideas are not yours; they just come to you like a radio receiver. He got that idea actually from the Vedic scriptures, because I've read that before somewhere else. So even his ideas, we think he's a unique person. He's getting it from somewhere else. So like I'm saying, no one's got their own unique idea. Everything is an iteration and mix of something else. So yeah, I can't. I don't know how much to attribute to other people and to myself, because maybe I read something 12 years ago that has been in my subconscious, and it was from another author, but now it's come up in a different form, and the way I've written it, you know, I think it's all mine, but it's not. So that's why I try to say that none of the ideas are mine either. Otherwise you create an attachment to them like you own them, but you don't.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and I don't know, we've seen creators online, like I know there was a big scandal with, I think it was Jay Shetty a couple of years back, like, because his Instagram, he like, huge following, and initially it was like early Instagram era, where it was just people were posting pictures of words, and he was posting all these quotes, and all these quotes were like great thinkers throughout history, and he wasn't attributing to it, so anyway, like somebody did like a slam piece, and he had to apologize, and now he started attributing quotes, but I don't know, I think about that, and it's honestly maybe even like a limiting belief in myself, where like I'm maybe too far on the other side, where I'm trying to like search back through my own psychological index and be like, where did I get this idea?
But it's also like, why do you want the credit? The net positive. No, as in someone who's saying, you know, I say, why would you want the credit? Like the whole thing that happened with Jay, for example, it doesn't really matter, because he's a net positive force for the world. Like as long as that is the end result, the end outcome, then why does it matter where he was getting his sources of inspiration from? You know, and it's the same with us, I think.
I agree. I think it comes a bit into clash with like essentially like Western philosophy and capitalism, which is like ownership, identity, capitalization on even the thoughts themselves. Like I have a pretty, maybe all this is like unique to myself, given like both my parents were like studied law. My dad worked his entire career in intellectual property, which is really actually, even in this context, like I don't know that I've ever thought about how crazy it is, but like in America you can own ideas.
Yeah, that's
and I guess in the West, like you could literally copyright and own ideas.
That's ridiculous.
And words.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
And while it's tough, because I agree in this like conversation, I'm like, yeah, how could you ever own an idea? But there is the duality where like before all those protections existed, you couldn't really build businesses and have brands and protection over that stuff. So
can I just to kind of slightly moving back to the first question there, something that we talk about a lot is at the end of the day, who cares about the idea? It's about the execution, right? Like we can all have the same idea, but if I go and actually do something, create a video, and impact people, nobody's going to know that you have the same idea as me. Right. So I think this it comes at the end of the day. It's meaningless, like arguing over whose idea was it first. Like it doesn't get us anywhere. And I think just to flip that on its head now, take one of those great thinkers, artists, philosophers, painters, whatever, musicians. I mean, this is something I said to Milan. I asked him, do you think they would still be as credited today as they were before, right, in their time? As in, would their works of art still be considered greats, classics, right? Would we still hold them to such a high standard when now we have incredible talent all around us? I mean, just look at what the internet's done with globalization. I mean, you can see someone, let's say in China, who's created something that maybe, I don't know, 100 years ago they would have thought was insane, right? So it's kind of an unfair question because, again, we have the technology as well, so we're advanced, so maybe they wouldn't even last a second if they were here. They wouldn't know how to put a YouTube video together, so maybe to them I'm a mastermind, right? So it's all context.
Yeah, I mean, it is context dependent, but I do think that that's actually like a great question to be asking as like a litmus test, which is like, would this be true and helpful 100 years ago, and will it be 100 years from now? Because to your point, like what we're super advanced now, which I think might even be like kind of like a rewritten narrative, like we may be coming from much more advanced, but we're more advanced than Michelangelo and the lads. Yet we still travel the world to go see the David. So like that has stood the test of time, and other works like it, Sistine Chapel, etc. So,
but yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I think that conversation, that question, we can go down the rabbit hole with it, because again, I think they could do the same with us, right? They could look at a video that we've made and just like forget about my painting. How the hell did you make this, right?
Yeah, but like the question then begets like, we now have the videos. Why do we still? Well, yeah, I mean, we owe a ton to them as creatives. Like, who did the David inspire to become a YouTuber eventually, right? But on top of that, like, why are we still going back? Like, something in that is magic, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Like, I think great art encapsulates truth.
Yeah.
And it goes through the ages. Like, why do we still have undoctored, essentially, transcripts of the Bible? Like, why do we still go back and read Socrates?
But I think that's a point, maybe slightly more of nostalgia than it is to accredit it to something that's better than something we're currently doing now. Does that make sense? So it's not to say that, maybe it's like an unfair comparison is what I'm trying to say ultimately. Is, look, you might create something, but why does that mean it's any less of a work of Leonardo da Vinci, right? Does it need, I mean, again, I can go into this deeper, does it need the audience's appreciation for it to be considered great art? And that's another question entirely, but like, again, something I said is, what if they never released it? Would it still be a great piece of art? Or did it need people to see it and validate it?
That's what I was saying to you. I was saying to you that in his time, it was Da Vinci was like bullied by Michelangelo and the people around him.
Yeah,
he wasn't considered great at that time, but because so much time has passed, we now consider it as an objective truth that he was great. Which I was going to ask you your opinion. I asked this yesterday, but this is moving on from the topic. We can come back. But what do you think some objective truths are, if there are any?
That's a really big question. And it's interesting because immediately in my mind, so I was raised Christian, as we discussed, and I mean, this is big, but they basically like there has to be in your world some sort of a source of objective truth, or it descends into like chaotic relativism.
Mhm.
So I was raised, it's like, okay, God and Jesus and the Bible is the source of all objective truth and morality, especially, and from there we can kind of disseminate truth or distinguish it. I'm in a place right now where I wouldn't self-identify as a Christian. I do think the Bible has capital T truth inside of it. But is it the only capital T truth? Jury's still out exploring that. So I think to answer your question directly, like, I would not point to things that are objective truths. I would say that I know it when I feel it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and this goes to kind of a little bit of the discussion we were just having. Like, you could take somebody from anywhere on earth, even if they weren't indoctrinated, they weren't educated on like the David statue. We'll come to that as the example. Michelangelo's David. Like, literally pull somebody out of like the Amazon.
Mhm.
I think a human being recognizes something in that as like intrinsically beautiful.
Of course, yeah.
Right. So like that is truth. We can't describe it. What about it? It's marble. It's this one's bigger than that one. Something in it is truth.
Yeah.
And I think that with intuition and this kind of overarching conversation we had about creation and creativity, like, because it's coming through you, like, audience or not, audience later, audience now, there, like, you're creating and you're bringing truth from within to without, and that's it. Like, you can only assess what feels true to you, and I know that kind of like sounds very new agey, but at least that's what I would say. Because like the more and more I study and learn about our reality and what is objectively true, like this couch and the things that are here, like there is absolutely way less than we thought was going on.
Yeah.
You know, like there's actually more space than there is matter.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Something to say about
And then the
that.
wave particle duality of nature, like, so I don't know. I don't know. That's what I would say to that question. What about you?
I think there are a few objective truths that I would agree with. The ones that come to mind are the one we spoke about yesterday was that health is the pillar to all success and appreciation, gratitude in life. So optimizing for your health. I feel like that's an objective truth because the quote we ended on yesterday was a healthy man wants 1,000 things, a sick man wants one. Right, so that's one. I feel like. Two is, I think, but this is like less esoteric. It's more practical and based on the world we live in now. If you don't design your life, it will be designed for you. I think that's another one. I think, and just to round it off at three, I think that everyone has a gift, you could say, or an inner intuition calling. I think that is an objective truth. Everyone has got it, but most people don't actualize it. Yeah, I don't know what you think.
On objective truth, just
Anything. If you have any objective truths,
what do I think of?
do you think there are any objective truths? There's a few more, but I just can't list them.
I think I remember reading something from, because this is like a big question within philosophy specifically, and I'm pretty sure the only one that cannot be debunked is that consciousness exists. Like that is the only thing that is.
Why can't it be debunked?
Well, because for us to have this conversation, for the question
So
to
you
be
need to ask the
observed,
question, yeah.
there has to be consciousness existing. But outside of that, everything else is kind of up for debate. Like especially with what we now are learning about, like quantum physics and reality like that. Like I can take on faith and goodwill in my sense perception that you guys are here.
Yeah, but you know,
but technically I can't prove that.
Yeah.
And it, obviously that extrapolates even further and further. But like I like the way you frame it because we're kind of like wandering between the practical and the more philosophical, which I love to.
Yeah, I was talking about more practical.
Yeah. So yeah, I think for practicality then, objective truths. I do like the health one. I agree with the calling. I had that conversation today at the cafe as well, and that's one of the harder things to reconcile. I think is that as an optimist, I choose to believe everyone does 100%. You wouldn't be here if you didn't. But the sad reality is that not everyone will, and in fact, most will not. And that's the part that like hurts me a lot. And I was kind of describing it to this girl I was talking to, like, that you can think of it like law of large distribution, kind of like a bell curve. Some percentage of people are going to actualize their potential and reach their calling whether I say something or not. Like they're just on the path. And then some percentage literally will never, even if you spent your entire life trying to evangelize to them and like get them into the light, if you will. But it's the people that are like right on the fence that are like, I know I'm meant for more, but I just am scared. I just don't know. I just like, that's who I think you and I and we are fighting for as creators, is like to bring people into themselves and into their purpose. Like the people that just need that nudge, they just need a little bit more information, they need a little bit of coaching, encouragement, maybe just someone to listen to them, to bring them into their purpose. Like I think that's kind of who we're fighting for. Well, I think we can go all day, boys. I'm excited to continue along this conversation, but to cap this one off, it'll be an interesting editing adventure for myself. It may not even reach the radio waves, but if it does, I think it's good to move towards the 3 closure questions I ask every guest. I guess we'll do one at a time. So the first of the 3 is, if you could go back to a younger version of yourself and tell him one thing, what would that be?
Start?
No, you go ahead.
Okay. I think, how young are we talking? Just
It's whatever version you think that needed to speak to this version of you.
that needed to speak to me. Okay, so I'd probably say around the same time I started thinking about these questions, so maybe 14, 15, around that time. I think, I think I would tell him to have more faith, have more trust in himself. I think I was the type of person, especially at a young age, where, you know, I was also raised a Christian, and when you go into school you get taught, you know, obviously a lot of science, physics, biology, but specifically, you know, evolution and a new origin story, put it that way. So now you have these conflicting beliefs, and this is kind of the core component of who we are. I mean, that's the biggest question you can ask: where did we come from?
Yeah.
And now that is being questioned. I mean, that's sweep the rug under your feet, right? So I think that for me that was a big struggling point, right? So I was fighting with that a lot. So I would just tell myself, hey, don't worry too much, right? Just have some faith, like put your best foot forward, and don't try and solve the world in your bedroom, right? In your head, it's not going to work like that, right? So yeah, I think yeah, just having a little more faith and is something that I would tell myself when I was younger.
Yes, with this question I always struggle because it's I just want to say I don't think I'll tell him anything because
Well, barring the butterfly effect,
yeah, okay, alright, cool.
you still get here.
Alright, cool, that's fine then. There's so many areas though, because it's like, if it's practical advice, or if it's business advice, or if it's spiritual faith.
I'm presenting you, but through this door you get to go back to a younger version of yourself and tell him one thing right now.
One thing only, yeah.
This version of you, what are you giving that kid to potentially improve his state?
Yeah, I don't want to tell him anything that will blow up his mind. I think I would say, even though it's kind of the opposite of what I was saying earlier, was to trust your intuition more, even though I was saying that you shouldn't trust yourself at that age. But I do think that for me specifically, I do think I would tell myself to, just because I have enough data now to understand that every time I didn't trust my intuition, I should have. So now I've got the experience to understand you were right all along.
Yeah, I love that. And my answer to mine and yourself that I've given before is like, keep going. You're right. And and that's the thing I talk about intuition is like, I wrote a post about this and I haven't seen anybody else say something like this, but I think it's the most true. Is like, your intuition is never wrong. You either misunderstand it or ignore it. And so people like we're like, oh, I trust my intuition, but look where it got me. It's like, no.
Yeah.
That wasn't your intuition, I promise you. And like, if you were to really be critically honest in that moment, it's like classic cases of relationship, right? Like, I thought they were the right one for me, but like, go back to whenever you had the choice to exit, something you knew in that moment. You always do. You literally always know.
100%.
So yeah, that's what I would say on that. Second question is, what is one quote that has always stuck with you or that you try to live by?
That you what, sir?
Like that has always stuck out to you or that you try to live by?
I've literally got a note I've
Same.
had since I was 16.
That's why I ask it.
And it's ages long.
I know. I mean,
Yeah.
words obviously are very important to yourself and myself.
Yeah.
So it's why I ask it, because I love
Okay.
I
I
love
don't
it.
have to think about that.
I think it's gonna be what applies to you right now. So
Or just one that, like, when I ask that question,
Yeah.
what jumps out?
one that just came to me right now was that your new life will cost you your old one,
Mm.
and that is, and it's such a generic term for the depth of my content. To give such a generic quote, I feel like it's a cop out, but it's true though. The generic and cliche ones are the truth. You can't have what you want without first giving up what you currently have. In most cases, because it's an identity clash crisis. You need to become someone else to have that. So yeah.
I don't know. I'm still thinking, to be honest. So you go.
You gotta go.
Do yours. All right. Okay. Cool. Well, one actually I wrote down the other day because, man, I must have read a lot of quotes, so it's kind of hard to pick one. But be the rock that the waves crash against and stand still. I think it's like a Stoic quote. I wrote that in my journal, and it was just at a time where I felt like everything was going wrong, and I was struggling to stay composed, right, to push through it. And I don't know, I probably just saw that on Instagram or something like that, but that really resonated with me at the time, because for the same reason that Stoicism resonates with a lot of young men, it's being able to withstand sort of the vicissitudes of life, right? And still show up and put your game face on and not cry and break down, right? And so yeah, that really resonated with me. So yeah. What was yours?
My current one, and I would encourage, as somebody who's like a big quote guy, always when you receive them, like at the top of that list, put one at your number one, and then as you reach new ones, if somebody essentially boots them out of the number one spot, that's kind of what I'm doing. So my current number one at the time of recording is it's from David Data's Way of the Superior Man, and it is, you were born as a sacrifice, and you can either participate in the sacrifice, dissolving into the giving of your gift, or you can resist it, which is your suffering.
Just kidding. Just
Off the top.
Yeah, so that one is crazy, and obviously it's like exactly my, and to go into like synchronicities, I mentioned this on a previous episode, like about rebranding and new directions with the podcast, but like heard a quote from Naval. He said that, and it's why I know I'm on the divine path to like circle to your original question with specifically what I'm doing. He said that in a weird way, people always live up to their name, like the meaning of their name. And I've always consistently been like, yeah, my name's okay. It's like kind of a generic white frat boy named Zach, right? Like I was kind of like critical, you know, like I wish I was named something cool because like all the greats, like Marcus, Alexander, like strong names. So I just didn't think about it. And then like I heard that quote and I was like, I wonder what my name means. And Zachary from like the biblical name means the Lord has remembered, and Schenken, my last name, is to give a gift in German.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
That's insane.
And I was just like yapping on about this podcast after podcast, and then I hear this moment. So anyway, another one of those like mega synchronicities, but
Yeah.
like literally like it's written to be part of this journey. So not speaking about me. And the final closer question is, what do you believe is your unique gift to give the world? You've had a long time to think about it. Multiple camera changes.
Yeah, I think I can go straight off the top with this one, to be honest. I think that's easy. I think it's storytelling. I think from a young age, not to keep going back to my story, but just to give some context for why. I like you mentioned, you always know what your purpose is. I never felt like I had to find it. It was always there because it was just something I was doing. I was always involved in arts. I would pick up my dad's camcorder and make little home videos, right? I would paint, I would draw. So it kind of found me in a way, right? I know that sounds corny, but it's really the truth. So I think for me, it's storytelling and using like different art mediums to illustrate my perspective of the world. And just to circle back to what I think it's now, it's helping other people find their inner warrior, right? So I have a phrase that I use for that voice, that inner voice, right? Which is, can you hear the drums? Because again, the Nordic sort of mythology and warrior mythology in general, like you can look at the Greeks as well, the war drums, right, is something that called them to battle. And so that's why I went with that. So yeah, I think for me it kind of comes down to storytelling and art. Yeah. Sorry, that was a very broad answer.
No, I like it.
Yeah.
I think mine is to raise the collective consciousness through entertainment. Because I feel like people always come to me for different things, I think, and it's not just one piece of advice they want from one selective area. So I think I've developed my skill or intuition or natural inclinations to a level where I can go into collate all of the stuff I know and output it in a way that I know is going to capture people's attention, which is the entertainment part. And obviously there's an underlying message throughout that. So yeah, through entertainment, and that could be the medium of anything. It could be TV, film, probably not music, but yeah, like I think those areas are where my natural inclination is. But to get that message across and to further go into that, spark an idea in someone else's mind. It was one thing Tupac said when he was doing an interview was, I might not change the world, but I guarantee I'll spark the mind that will. I'm not saying I'm going to do that, but I want to spark ideas in other people's mind. So yeah, and then on a long enough time scale, that's how you raise the collective consciousness.
Amazing. I love it, gentlemen.
What was
Where?
yours, sorry?
Yeah, we didn't get you.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, I mean, you kind of answered.
yeah,
at the
I
start,
kind of
yeah.
answered at the beginning, but it's, I mean, I believe it's like me.
Oh, yeah, again.
I think that the mission I was put here to do is to help as many people reconnect with themselves as possible. So similarly, raise the collective consciousness, like tap people into this like eternal, like their infinite potential. Like everybody has the ability to be absolutely limitless, and I will not gatekeep that. Like I'm trying to give that to as many people as possible. And I think some people will take more convincing, they'll take more listening, they'll take more podcasts. But like that's, as long as God keeps me in the game, like I'm just gonna keep chipping away at that. And yeah, so that's kind of my answer. But
Love that, man.
I appreciate this a lot more than you know. Excited to continue this dialogue and this friendship as well.
Yeah. Nah, man, I have to say, bro, we spoke a few times, but you're very well spoken, eloquent, and you communicate ideas very well. Like, one thing I'm trying to improve is speak the way I write, but you can't, but I feel like you do that very well. So I could definitely see that. So you have a big future, bro. So
Appreciate that, bro. I'm trying to improve my writing to be like my speaking, so
maybe
we can workshop with each other. Yeah. But where can the people find you? What are you working on right now that you're excited about?
Yeah, YouTube, Milan, same on Instagram, and Untethered page, of course. Yeah, hopefully you will see me everywhere soon. So
I like that. Call the shot.
Yeah, so same again, working on YouTube, and you can find me at Sagas of Lazar on Instagram as well. So, yeah.
Excellent. All the links will be in the description. You've either found us YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to the YouTube channel for behind the scenes of what's going on as I continue the adventure of building out this podcast and the brand and everything. Message me with your thoughts. I'd love to communicate with DMs at ZDSCHENKN, Twitter and Instagram. And Thank you for spending your most valuable resource of your attention with myself, Milan, and Ben today. Memento Mori, and I'll catch you on the next episode of the Tribune Podcast.
And subscribe now because it's like investing. It's like buying at the dip. This is gonna blow up for sure.
Good shit, boys.
Solid, man. Got it done in the end.
Let's hope so.
Push through it. That's it.
Imagine this didn't record.
Broken camera.